And now, coming to you from the Pensado Media Center, powered by Westlake Pro.
Where Greg Wells makes his magic, he gives us a tour. The Butterscotch Remix Contest from Avid Westlake Pro, it's rocking. Pensado Awards is heating up, a lot going on. You're at the place, it's Pensado's place.
I always love his harmonica solo.
Oh, they're amazing.
Yeah, man.
and I'm humble about it, too.
Leo Saramago, man.
Absolutely.
A blessing to the
Been
show.
good for a bunch
Hey,
of
guys,
years.
thanks for dropping by. I always say this every week, and this time I really mean it for once. We got a lot going on.
And what do you mean? Thanks for dropping by.
Yeah.
And it's Halloween. Even though when you see this, it won't be Halloween. We're taping on Halloween.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people out there that you can't see in masks and werewolves and stuff doing Michael Jackson dances. Like, it's pretty crazy. Should we get going?
Yeah.
Let's do that. Hey, everybody. Hope you're well. Thanks for joining us. Likes and subscribes. Most appreciated. Shout out to our incredible partners, 1500 or Nothing, Blackbird Academy, Westlake Pro, Avid, NAMM, Heaviosity, Lander, and Fab Factory.
Yep.
Now, have you downloaded the stems for the Butterscotch We Are All We Got remix contest?
Yes.
Avid and Westlake Pro are bringing that baby, and if not, you need to get it popping. This challenges both your mix chops and your producer chops. This is a remix, so you're making new versions of this song, and you get to show off a completely different set of tools. It's a super cool thing. Enter right here at this link. You see right below me, and that link is bit.ly WLP Remix. That's bit.ly/WLP Remix. Win some stuff. Winning some stuff is good stuff. Chongor?
We've got Pro Tools, gift card from Westlake Pro, interface from Focusrite, keyboards from Novation, software from Isotope, a Skype appearance on Pensado's place. We got a lot of stuff you guys are gonna like.
So enter the contest, guys. Again, we're going to try to get Butterscotch on the air just so you get a vibe from her. She's so cool.
Yeah.
That's something we should make a note for next week, like we talked about last week, but we'll do it this time.
Yeah.
Good stuff. We want to hear your work. And then Dave will obviously judge, and we're going to announce those winners, and then you win all that stuff that Chongor alluded to. The other thing that's coming up, about a month away, 5 weeks or so, Pensado Awards 4, brought to you by 1500 or Nothing. Again, not that far away. All the stuff is going on. Nominations are in. Tickets are rolling out. The pro committee is voting soon. Production is getting ready. We're in that time period. We also have a bunch of great companies that are supporting us beyond our title sponsors. You see them behind me. Folks like Acusonus and Groove 3, IK Multimedia, Fab Filter. There's, as you see, a whole bunch of guys that stepped up to the plate. So come join us. It's Sunday, December 3rd at the Henry Fonda Theater. You know the drill. Put on your rock and roll finery, step out. It's time for you to celebrate yourself. Ladies, we know we love to see you there. You're a very important part of our community, and nothing would be boring than having an event with all men. So come show out well. Go to pensadoawards.com for all the details. You can buy tickets there, and it's going to be a blast. Don't you think? You excited?
I am.
You can start to feel it, the momentum building, right?
Well, yeah, no. But what happens every year, I swear to you, you know this happens to me. I feel like, oh, that's 4 weeks, that's a long ways away. And then I go to bed, I wake up, and it's here.
It's like the next day.
It's the next day.
It's the most frightening time
So
period.
what Herb said about get involved with us now, man, it's going to be here before we know it.
It's coming fast. And we want to
And
see
by
you
the
there.
way, you're doing an incredible job. It's going to shape up to be
the
best
team
one
is.
yet.
Well, I think the team is. We got a great team. So, you guys know who the team is. Chongor and Talisha and Kevin and Ron and
they're all
Karen
doing an
and
incredible job.
Robbie and Lisa. So come join us. Have some fun. Now, for our guests, there's a little segue there because the people that folks are going to meet this week and take a studio tour is also our Giant Award winner.
Yeah.
We could spend 20 minutes talking about Greg Wells, but give your perspective really quickly.
Well, you always call him a one-stop shop, but he's a one-stop influence. So you don't have to go anywhere else to learn about drums, keyboards, production, songwriting, engineering, mixing,
Scary.
relationships.
Scary.
I mean, he's so good he's qualified to marry people in L.A. That's how good he is.
So he's an officiant.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But I swear, Greg is one of those people that you think you're making a little progress with your life and your career, and then you talk to Greg and you're like, man, he's so far ahead of me.
He posted something on his Facebook page where he is literally sitting cross-legged playing a toy piano for his child. And he's actually killing that. He's not even thinking about it, and he's killing it. Like, I was like, I hit him, I was like, Greg, stop. Like, you're just so talented.
He's just something about the way he feels music is the way I grew up on music.
Absolutely.
He just goes right to your heart.
And this is where I think it'll pay off for you guys. We got a chance to go behind the veil. You're going to see a tour of his studio. Greg has vintage things and all kinds of gear, and it's just this environment where amazing music is made. I mean, this guy can go from Keith Urban to Dua Lipa. Like, it's just, he's a brilliant guy. So please enjoy this run. Here's the Greg Wells studio tour.
Greg.
So this is my control room. We built all these rooms from scratch. This used to be a auto mechanics garage. It's just a big shoebox. The floors slant this way to that front corner of the building so that the oil can run off down the drain, which is actually really good for sound, to have weird angles. Let me just walk you through everything in here. Some of my favorite stuff. First of all, that's my favorite album. I have many copies of it, and Jamie Cullum, the incredibly talented Jamie Cullum, gave me that portrait of Count Basie, who I'm also a massive fan of him and his orchestra through different eras. These are some of my favorite synths ever and keyboards. I'm a huge Roland fan. This is a synth that I overlooked massively, called the Jupiter 80, and I overlooked it because it didn't look like a Jupiter 8, which I also had in my life for quite a while. And it kind of looks a bit like an organ, and I thought, that's weird, what's that? But then finally, years later, I heard it, and it's absolutely ridiculous sounding what it can do. It's really eccentric, very bonkers, beautiful, genius synth. This Juno 106 here, also a Roland synth, is hard to beat, and this thing, is payment for my very first recording session in Los Angeles. I was doing some song demos for a lovely guy named David O'Brien, who I've lost touch with, and he paid for studio time and was, paying for singers to come in and sing his songs. I was the band. He had run out of money by the end, and I remember him looking at me just saying, I don't have any money to give you. Do you want that synth? And I'm like, yes, I do. And it works perfectly. It works exactly like it did the day that I got it from him. There's a Dave Smith Prophet 8 on the bottom, which is deadly. This thing is completely insane. The Moog Voyager. So the irony of this wall of synthesizers and this brilliant unit, the Swedish Mellotron thing, that's a whole other thing I could talk about for an hour. The irony is when I first worked with Keith Urban and we wrote that song Wasted Time, which wound up being a #1 song last summer. There's a lot of synths on that track. In fact, there was no guitar or banjo on it, banjo, until the very final session in this room with Keith. It was all just beats and synths. And I'd like to tell you what synths I used on that song. The answer is it was none of these synths, because I had him for like windows of 2 or 3 hours at a time. He lives in Nashville, he lives outside of Nashville, I guess, and he would come out here, and he was one of the judges on American Idol at the time, so he would fly out here. He'd come here before going to Idol. I'd have him for 2 or 3 hours. We were working super fast, just trying to get stuff done. Then he'd have to leave around 5 o'clock, go film the show. Then he would fly back to Nashville that night so he could get his kids to school the next morning. This is who this guy is. So everything synth-wise was in the box. It was all in the box. There wasn't one piece of synth gear that looked like this. And it was, Arturia, it was Native Instruments, it was just anything I could get my hands on that I have to just help me work super fast and keep things moving and keep him kind of in the moment and excited, and me, and our co-writer, Jay Hart. Just keep the train moving, That's the one thing I really love about Ableton, but I feel like I'm just too busy to learn Ableton. I bought it, I want to learn it. And I see some young producers I collaborate with sometimes, they're just like, the music's playing, never stops, and it's like the party's going, it's great. And I can't do any of that with Pro Tools. We have to stop all the time, we have to, so, you know, I'm an old man, so whatever we can do to like keep things going, it would have taken longer to plug these in. I didn't have the luxury of time with Keith. Typically, if we were making a song with an artist that lived here or had flown here and was here for a number of days, then I would plug these things, and they are actually plugged in. But, you know, sometimes I'm working without an engineer if it's a writing session. The thing with Keith started as a writing session. I think it was just me here and our co-writer and Keith. That was it. Ian McGregor is my engineer most of the time, and he wasn't here for a lot of that stuff. And I think he started coming in toward the end. And Ross Hogarth helped us finish the song in here. That's when Keith started playing some guitar, when Ross was here. Let's see, moving over here. These are some of my favorite pieces of gear anywhere, ever in life. This was the first serious compressor I ever bought. It's from a church in St. Louis. If you look at the back of it, it says something like balcony right or balcony left. It was used, you know, for the live sound in a church. It's a stunning sounding 1176. I've had it since 1995. I run all vocals through it all the time. I would be lost without it, actually. Jeff Daking makes amazing, amazing gear. Those are compressors, and I have some mic pre's of his as well. And I'm a huge fan of retro instruments, and I love this guy, the 176. I love the double wide compressors. This is an original version that this guy's based on. This does more than that does. This is kind of a one trick or two trick pony. This is one of the Holy Grail compressors called a 175B. That's from the mid 1960s. This has become my vocal mic pre of choice, hands down. It's Eric Valentine's Undertone Audio mic pre with his really glorious magic EQ that comes with it. Lots of options here for different transformers or transformerless, other things. It sounds amazing. You can't go wrong with API EQ. I've got 6 of them here. These are 550Bs, these are 550As, these are 560s. This is a recent purchase, the Chandler EMI RS124. It is just bananas on a vocal. This is how I like it set, pretty much. Something like that. Sounds amazing. This is some new stuff from Rupert Neve. This is an inductor EQ called the 551. These both just came out. This is called a 535 diode bridge compressor, and it is amazing sounding. Here's the vocal chain. It hits the mic pre first, then it comes to this 1176 always, and then is usually followed by a second compressor, which might be the Retro Instruments 176. Sometimes it's this guy up here, this Holy Grail dude, the RCA BA6B, which sounds like it looks. It's just amazing. This is really old stuff. I believe this is from the 50s. And then sometimes this will be at the end of the vocal chain, this guy. Just for a little bit of love somewhere in the top end, maybe sometimes a little extra bottom. It's quite often not in the chain, that's it. But then I will, in Mix World, I'll run vocals through the Shelfer channel. I'll do the Michael Brower thing where you run vocals through all kinds of different compressors and blend them. I really love doing that. Michael is a genius mixer. I've learned so much from getting to work with him, but also just watching his videos with Mixers to Masters are like mind-blowing for me. All right, so let's move kind of toward the middle of the room, which leads us to this Sriracha Modern Art. This is by an artist whose name escapes me, but he's in downtown Los Angeles and he makes really cool stuff. And then kind of just to the right of that are these glorious PMC monitors. My life in this room changed when they showed up. I no longer have to check mixes in the car or at home. I mean, I can make creative changes, but in terms of like sonic balances, what it sounds like sitting in the middle of these speakers, sitting in this room in that chair, that's what it sounds like. It's such a a gift. It helps me mix faster. I need less gear to mix. I'm mixing quicker, I'm mixing better. There's nothing to kind of learn with these speakers, which I really, really, really love. The top half is its own speaker. You don't necessarily need that bottom speaker, but it's an extension. And I've actually mixed just on those top speakers. To me, I like hearing the low end go all the way down to 10 hertz, which you actually can hear on these speakers. You can clearly hear 15 hertz. I swear you can hear 10 or maybe even a little bit lower. I'm also a bit crazy, but they're just amazing. Then we have this console here, which once again is made by the really brilliant Eric Valentine and his company, Undertone Audio. All his consoles are custom made. He uses really beautiful, really usually quite expensive parts. And I couldn't afford the console that I wanted where every channel had metering, and it was gonna wind up just being ridiculously expensive. So I remember saying, I can't get one of your consoles. And then he said, well, actually, why don't we just put on it what you need? And that's why this console looks kind of weird. Like there's one set of meters right there for the master output. That's it. If I had an oil well in my backyard or was a hedge fund trustafarian, I would have monitors on every channel, and I would have some like completely blown up thing, and I'd have 50 channels of that EQ. I have 8 because it's expensive and I'm funding everything myself. So it's 8 channels there that you see, and we're using that for tracking. That's some drum stuff, and it's piano, and it's whatever we choose to do. But mostly it's kick in, kick out, snare top, snare bottom, the 2 toms, and then 2 channels for piano. And there's analog inserts on all those channels should we need them. And then there's 16 more channels of summing, which you don't see here. It's all in the console. Within those 16 channels, there's 2 different mix buses. Mix bus 1, we see mostly here. It goes through a whole bunch of analog gear. It goes through another Eric invention, Eric's Unfairchild compressor down there. Stunning piece of recording equipment that, for my money, makes things sound better just by running audio through it, even if I'm not compressing. I mean, Eric told me about that trick. He said, just try that. He's right. Again, there's no rule book here. This is just my opinion that he's right, but he's right. He's right about everything. And then it goes into this unit that I really love. It's called the Overstayer, made by Jeff Terzo. This is called the Master and Servant, and it kind of generates extra harmonics. You can tweak it to do all kinds of stuff. I love it. It just makes things sound kind of more musical, more like it's live and in front of me, which is always the thing I'm trying to get. My records, very rarely, well, you'll never hear the toms panned hard left and hard right, because it doesn't sound like that when you're watching a drummer. I'd like to feel like I'm sitting in the audience watching a performance and getting lost in a live performance. So that's kind of my perspective. Whatever can make me feel that is a good thing. And then I love this guy here, the Vitalizer made by SPL. It's a really crazy unit. There's a few different plug-in versions of it too. They all sound quite good. To me, that guy sounds better than all the plugins. And it's weird. I don't know what it is. It's like an EQ. There's some stereo expansion on it. There's a thing where you can crank the bass frequencies and also compress just the bass frequencies. It's kind of a mastering tool, really, more than anything. I just know when I turn it on and I tweak it in a setting that I found that I like, and I just add more or less of it, things almost always sound better. I rarely take it out of the mix chain. And then we have the Berkowski Reverb, which you might be familiar with. It's just a really beautiful, really dense, lush sounding digital reverb. Doesn't sound digital really at all. And then I'm a big fan of Antelope Audio. That's a converter called the Pure 2. I run all my mixes through that. I'm also clocking, there's an equipment closet behind that wall that has the 10MX Antelope clock. And I'm also running Antelope interfaces. I think it's called the HD32, Orion HD32. I have 2 of them. Really open sounding, really kind of, know how stupid this sounds, but they're sort of tape sounding to me. It reminds me of vinyl. Like even the clock, the 10MX, makes things sound more like a vinyl record. Feels to me when I hear it. It doesn't sound like vinyl. This is digital. We're in a digital world, but it just sort of takes out all the kind of pokey harshness of the top end. It still delivers lots of top end data up there, which I like, but it just frames it in a really kind of way that's just easier on my ears. It makes me sound like I'm a better mixer. And whenever anything does that to me, I immediately I find all this fascinating, but I find it hard in the same way that if I'm playing chess with somebody, I don't want to play an easy chess player. I want them to kick my butt. I want it to be a hard game. I want the puzzle to be difficult to solve. That's what all this stuff feels like to me. So whenever I find gear like this RCA compressor or that mic pre or these microphones that I'm probably about to talk about, it just makes my life so much easier. It's a thing I don't have to think about anymore because there's some brilliant ears and minds behind that gear that solved it for me, Let me move this way. Some fun pieces underneath this Unfair Child. There's a Culture Vulture, which I love. It's the Retro Instruments stay level based on the gate stay level. MCI 1/4 inch machine, modified by Chris Mara, or is it Mara? Chris, I'm not sure how to pronounce your surname, but I love this unit. And I will often print mixes to it. It's just 2-track. I run it at 30 IPS. Chad Blake was recently telling me at AES that he likes to run this at 15 IPS, 1/4 inch. That's his thing, a big part of the sound. So that's my next thing to experiment with and try. This A800 Studer was owned by Andrew Sheps until I happily bought it from him when he mentioned that he had it for sale. And before that, it was one of 2 machines that were in the old A&M studios in Studio A. So that means that We Are the World was recorded on this machine. So many iconic albums were made on this 24-track machine. This is a 1971 gorgeous deluxe Les Paul. It has mini humbucker pickups, and I don't have a guitar that has mini humbucker pickups except this one. It's a little brighter, it's a little more contained, not quite as large sounding as a Les Paul, which for recording is really great. It gives me a more focused sound. It's a really beautiful sounding guitar that I got from Imperial Vintage Guitars, which is a Danger store too. This is a real favorite. This is this incredible artist named James Trussard, who he's a French guy. He's an inventor, he's a guitarist, he's a musician of a bunch of different instruments. This is a guitar made of steel, and it's a telly, so you would think that a steel guitar might sound really kind of harsh and metallic. It's the opposite. It's one of the best sounding tellies I've ever heard. It's really full, huge sounding, it plays great, it stays in tune beautifully as well, and it looks like this, which I love. And I've had this for a number of years, and James is a lovely guy and a real kind of brilliant music mind. And this I love. I have a bunch of Jazz Masters, but I could never quite find one that I love. I love this one. This is a custom shop, 2011. I bought it used off Reverb, and it sounds great. I love running it in the middle position, so it's both pickups. Gives me that sort of like 90s indie rock, Sonic Youth. Just, I don't know, I can't explain it. It just feels like home to me. And this guy is looks exactly like a 1962 Strat. It's a custom shop, Fender custom shop. It's about maybe 4 years old. And I've had people walk in this room that actually own a 62 Strat, and they were convinced that they were looking at another one. This, I'm not even really much of a Strat guy, more of Telly and Jazzmaster and other stuff, but I love this guitar. I love it. It records so beautifully. It's a dream to play. I found this at True Tone Music in Santa Monica. It was on the floor. There were 3 of them, and this was my favorite one. And then these amplifiers. There's quite a weird collection here. You can't really see it, but this guy down here on the floor is a 1965 Fender Deluxe Reverb. And it was owned by Don Skuse, who was the owner of the cool music store in my hometown in Canada called Ed's Music Workshop. And it just sounds like you would hope it would sound. It sounds like this incredible, very Fendery, the spring reverb in there is to die for, and I record a lot through that. Keith Urban actually loves that amp. And he played a lot through it. And then he also played a lot through this guy, which is, I believe it's 65 amps first head that they came out with. It's called the London. And it's a really balanced, beautiful sounding amp for obvious reasons because of the name. It's based on a very English sounding guitar amp. There's sort of a Marshall circuit in there, and there's also a box thing, and then they just kind of have their own thing happening, which I love. Below that is Divided by 13, an amp that is incredible that Guitar Fly at Work can turn me on to. And then there's this. Supro is making new guitars and new amps, and this amp is so cool sounding. It breaks up in the most awesome way. I love it. It doesn't sound like anything I have. It's very unique, instantly recordable. And last but definitely not least is this crazy little amp made out of Hammond organ part that Mark Rubel at the Blackbird Academy in Nashville turned me on to. It's a company called Analog Outfitters. I'm pretty sure they're based out of Champaign, Illinois, where Mark is from. And that's called the Rode amp, I think. They have another amp called the Sarge. This thing is an actual railway sign. It's a very unique sound. It's pretty bright, kind of Fendery on top. And it's just really fun to play through. I like stuff that's got a real personality and gives me the feeling of fun, because this stuff should be fun, you know? And of course it's hard work, but anything that kind of makes things a bit more fun helps me. It helps like let the good stuff come in and keep the dumb overthought stuff out of the way. Let's go to my vocal and piano room where the vocal mics are, and there's a pump organ, 3 different pianos. I really love this room. There's also a whole bunch of guitars and a guitaron here and a Jerry Jones baritone guitar that unfortunately they're not making them anymore. But and that's one of the new Supro guitars that I really love. So much fun to play. This piano is a tacked piano. It is it's just a Baldwin upright piano that I had my incredible piano technician Jim Wilson put thumbtacks in the hammers, so it sounds like that. I always play the theme to Thomas the Tank Engine when I play it, but it just records so well. It doesn't even really sound like a tack piano necessarily, it just sounds like a bright piano. This thing is a pump organ that I found in another thrift store in Santa Monica that's not there anymore. It's unfortunately tuned to 22 cents sharp, 440, so using it is a bit of a feat. We have to, sometimes I either just kind of plug my ears and play the part I want to play and then I'll tune in Pro Tools, or we will. This guy is an old Wurlitzer upright, and I got it because it just sounds like sort of a kind of ignored church basement piano, which I grew up with. And it sounds really plain and kind of boring and just sort of simple, pleasantly kind of not professional. Records really well. There's no bottom end. It's all kind of broken down there. But this was the piano that Katy Perry and I wrote Not Like the Movies, on which we wound up performing live on the Grammys. My favorite way to record this piano is using that 47 behind us, exactly where it is in the middle of the room, rolling off all the high end. So it just kind of sounds like that, and it just is magic. And that is the sound of that piano on Not Like the Movies. And over here, we have another piano that, this one was really created by Jim Wilson. This is a 1940 or 1941 Steinway B, which means it's around 7 feet. And it's rebuilt. Jim rebuilt the whole thing. The only thing that's original is the body, the soundboard, and the keys, and everything else is new. And it just sings really clear on the top. top end. The thing about Steinways is they just kind of do whatever you give them, and they sort of stand there like, is that all you got? And I, for most of my life, have never ever been able to afford a piano like this. I still can't afford a new one, which is why I went the route of buying a used one and having it tweaked, which was still a bunch of money. We have an open top Celeste, and the genius drummer Matt Chamberlain saw this in Florida. I can't remember where, but it was in Florida, and he reached out and he said, Greg, I think you have to get this thing. I've never seen an open top Celeste before. They're usually enclosed, and they usually look like small upright pianos. That's all over lots of records that I've made. But what's really all over lots of records that I've made is this right here and the mic beside it. These mics took me a long time to find. They're both new mics. Even though I didn't want that, I wanted vintage. I wanted a vintage 47 and a vintage 251. Because just from my years of being a studio musician and then starting to produce singers in studios that had a good mic cabinet, those were pretty much always my favorite vocal mics. I also love, I like lots of mics. I like a 67, I like an M49 on the right singer, C12s are beautiful. I like a SM58, $120 microphone. But these ones are really kind of it for me. The list of people that has sung on these mics is pretty nuts. Adele sounded best on this. Dua Lipa sounded best on this one. This is a 250, which is a cardioid 251. Katy Perry usually sings on this microphone. Sometimes we'll go to the 47, but she has sort of a big, full voice, and it sounds better on this mic, which is a little prettier sounding. The 47 is more like Frank Sinatra, Nat King Cole. It's a jazzier mic. It was George Martin's favorite mic on the Beatles. It's got that just big, kind of deeper, I hate the word warm, but it's a warmer sound. It is a little more sort of stereotypically masculine sounding, although sometimes that can sound amazing on female singers as well. These are both made by a guy named Alan Venitosh at Telefunken USA. I will usually test singers on both mics and I'll say sing a verse and a chorus on both mics, and then we'll pick the winner, and we can tell it within the first couple lines. It's usually either or. Hardly ever do we have to go to a third microphone. But when the vocal sounds right, just like a great camera, when you've got the right camera set, you've got the right lens, you're taking a thing, you just have such confidence in the way the picture's being taken, when you have the right ingredients in the kitchen and you know how to make the dish, but you got the best stuff, and you like the stove, and you like the, you know how fresh the spices are. It just inspires a confidence and lets your brain not have to fixate on fixing that problem, The less problems, the less fires there are for me to put out here, the better. And I can just focus on trying to keep the music great and making me feel something. These microphones are such a godsend to me. It took me years to get to the point where I had enough cash to get one of them, and I always had like knockoff versions of these mics. And there's some great companies out there. I've owned a lot of those mics that are making mics that are an homage to this, or sometimes even a direct copy. It's all down to your own opinion, and you have to hear stuff and try stuff, but these are the ones for me. This is all original graffiti art done by a really talented artist named Muck. Enter the drum room. And the drum room is looking pretty fun right now because I've been working on my first movie, not about me, I'm saying I've been hired to work in a movie, and there's a lot of big drums in the soundtrack. And I really got into kind of working with that stuff and mixing it, and I just thought I need to have some huge drums in here. So I like big drums anyway. That's a 24-inch kick, and this was the kick drum I was using forever, which is 26 inches. Those are typically bigger sizes than you'll see on drums that are maybe being played on most pop albums, but I like bigger drums. Then I got this guy, which is 28 inches. This is an old Ludwig bass drum. I love this. This is the original painted head from the 1920s. This is 28 inches. This all looks really tiny compared to this crazy beat-em-off little thing. This is a 40-inch Ludwig concert bass drum that sounds like the end of the world. I mean, I'll just... Everything's shaking in here. Here's a double bass over here that I got at McCabe's Music in Santa Monica. It's a student bass, but I forget the wood that it's made of. It's not particle wood, it's like a nicer grade of wood. It actually sounds great. These are most of the snares that I have. There's some over there too behind the drums. This guy has been on so many records. I bought this at West LA Music, which is a store that's not there anymore. It's a reissued Black Beauty. I remember I paid $333 for it, and I thought that was a sign because I like the number 3. It just records so well. All Black Beauties sound great. This one really just sings. Just real fast, I would be remiss if I didn't point out this thing. This isn't the actual kit because I destroyed it, but when I was 3 years old, I was given this little drum kit for Christmas. I think it lasted a week before I just pulverized it. I think it's a Japanese company, and they made this little, like a little tom attached to the snare. It was the happiest day of my life. Christmas Day, 1972, I think. Really fun. And I saw this for sale. I got it from somebody in England off eBay, and I was just happy to get the box. I remember what the box looked like. I actually framed the cover of the box. It's hanging in the front lounge. You can take a picture of it before you go. There's a company out of Austin, Texas, called A&F Drums. And they are making these beautiful drums, mostly wooden drums, that kind of look like they are 300 years old from the bottom of some ancient ocean seabed, but they have the kind of the wallop of the 1940s and 50s Radio King drums made by Slingerland, and I really love them. And that was my main recording kit for years. It was an early 40s Slingerland Radio King kit that, once again, Matt Chamberlain had found for me, and he almost bought it for himself, and he said, I don't think I'm gonna get it, but you should probably pick it up, and he was right. And I record a lot with this drum. It's like, I love it. Very versatile drum. It can sound real gushy and deep, it can sound real high. Right now it's kind of in the middle. Records like a dream. There are photos of the Beatles singing into this mic. It's called a Reslo. It's a really fun drum mic, actually. It's just really kind of dumb sounding. They were sort of the Royer microphones of the day back in the early 60s in England. It's an English microphone. They were used as vocal mics. This microphone is really worthy of mentioning. This is probably the snare drum's best friend. It's, I believe it's called a V7. No, this is the V7X, made by the SE company, which I guess is affiliated with, it's one of Rupert Neve's company. And what I love about this is it sort of does the kind of beta 57, beta 58 thing, but the rejection on the sides is really intense. Like, the problem always, right, when you're miking a snare drum, you start playing the hi-hat loud, all of a sudden you have all this hi-hat in the snare mic. You don't really hear the hi-hat much in this mic. It's really, really, really reduced. Far more so than like a 57, which typically I would have here, where you're getting tons of hat bleed. And there's also something about the V7X that has a bit extra lower stomach punch to it, which I love. You know what, the bathroom is actually worth showing because we have a lot of famous folks in here that have insulted me. So this is all 21 Pilots saying silly things about me, insulting my Canadian-isms. Katy Perry wrote, now it says we have, but it used to say, I have taken so many good shits here, Katy, and then Joe Keefe from Family of the Year altered it to say that. That's Demi Lovato, All American Rejects, one of my favorite piano players, Matt Rawlings. And the theme is just basically taking me down. Oh, this, I gotta say too, this is very name-droppy, but this was a very fun day when this thing showed up. This woman is as lovely and as sweet and self-deprecating and funny and generous and talented as you could ever hope for. And also definitely one of the best songwriters I've ever worked with. No one ever talks about her as being a songwriter. They just talk about her voice, which is extraordinary. But her writing is just as good. I mean, she's a really poignant lyricist. Her melodies are incredible, and all the melodies and all the lyrics are her. She's something else. And That number now has a 3 in front of it. We're at 35 million. I'm gonna stop talking. Thank you for letting me blather on, get all caffeinated and talk, and I'll show you to the door. See you later. Bye-bye.
He's the man. Take us home, Dave.
Herb, this week you take us off.
Well, one of the conversations we had earlier is that really great and talented people do a number of things. They inspire you, they refresh you, you learn from them.
True, true.
And that refreshes in your creativity. And I think Greg does that for you musically, and he does it as a human being. And you just saw the place where he does all that. So to our good friend and to the winner of the Giant Awards, hope you enjoyed this episode. As Dave always says, see you next week.